welcome to Talk About. My name's John Twigg. We've got a very interesting guest today, Rachel Blaney, Member of Parliament. Thanks,
Hi.
Rachel, for
Thank
coming
you.
in. You've done, I guess, a bit of media so far, eh?
Absolutely, done a bit, yeah.
How long is it since you've been a member? Time flies.
It's just over 6 months since the day of the election.
How are you finding it?
I'm finding it a lot of hard work and really enjoyable work for the most part. It's certainly an adjustment to get used to flying as much as I now have to fly.
Yeah.
And we have a large riding, the third largest riding in British Columbia. So a lot of time spent either on a ferry, in a plane, or in a car.
Yeah.
But really, really important work.
Yeah. What have you done that you're really, so far, that's a good thing?
I think there's a few things. I think the work that I've done around the Comox Communication Centre has been really meaningful.
That's the marine transportation.
Yeah, it's the communication center. It's really important because they're the folks that listen in to all the radios that are happening on the ocean and sort of suss out any emergency issues that may be arising. So, you know, a few years ago there was 5 of them across British Columbia. They've gone down to 3 and are slated to go down to 2, one being in Prince Rupert and one in Victoria.
Are those budget cuts left over from the Harper Conservatives?
Yeah, this was a Conservative motion. During the campaign, there was a lot of commitment to keeping these centres open, and now we're seeing that that's not the case. Was very happy at the Standing Committee, the Fisheries and Oceans Standing Committee, there was a motion made, and they were going to look into this and do some of the research. While that was in process, the minister still sent out the letters telling people that there will be a closure on May the 10th. So we're waiting to hear what the report is back. And again, you know, the reality is 50% of the distress calls and incidents that happen for communication centres across Canada, 50% of them are on our coastline. We have the largest coastline, so to take, you know, from 5 down to 3 down to 2, it just doesn't make good sense in my mind.
Was it, I think, 4 jobs? Is that all?
Yeah, there's several jobs. I'm not even sure how many jobs there are off the top of my head, but I do know that when I was campaigning and knocking on so many doors, a lot of people brought this issue up and just said, you know, we all work here. We watch how much the oceans are used. We want to make sure that the environmental protections are there and that there's somebody there to respond in terms of any kind of environmental issue. And we also want to make sure that there's somebody there to respond if there's any issues around safety. So, you know, we're a tourist-based economy in a large part, so making sure there's good communications.
Not cruise ships, but the like the, you know, the wildlife boat tours and things like that.
Yep, there's a lot of people on our oceans, especially during tourist season. So it's a potentially a very sad loss, and I've been very impressed by how many people have been sending letters and letting the minister and myself know that this is a huge concern, not just in our riding, but in the areas around us.
Now your riding goes down and includes Comox, does it not?
It does include Comox.
Yeah, but not Courtenay?
It does not include Courtenay, no. And it goes over to Powell River, and it actually goes up quite a bit on the coastline up to around Kinkham Inlet, Rivers Inlet,
Yeah, right. Now, people watching, perhaps many will know that you have a close affinity to First Nations. Your husband, Darren Blaney, was a former chief of Malco, one of the 3 nations in Campbell River now. So how familiar are you with Jody Wilson-Raybould, the Justice Minister, who I don't know if she ever lived on Quadra, but she's got affiliations?
Yeah, she's definitely got family in the area, and I know that she went to high school in Comox, and a lot of very proud teachers in her riding that saw how amazing she was. I knew Jody before, and so it was great to reconnect with her in the House. And I have to say that it's a wonderful thing to see an Aboriginal woman sitting in the House of Commons as a minister. So
not just a minister, but one of the senior.
Yeah,
it's really something.
That's a very positive thing.
But can she not help on something like the Comox Coast Guard Station?
Well, you know, I've really been working hard with the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans on that work, and that's Minister Tutu. So we've had numerous discussions, and definitely I know he's been inundated by a lot of letters and concerns.
Yeah, keep those cards and letters coming, folks.
Keep them coming.
Now, that's one thing. What else are you proud of so far?
Well, I think the amount of constituency work that we've done, I think the staff that I have an office open now in Campbell River.
Actually, I'm going to jump in there.
Yeah.
Sharing an office with MLA Claire Trevena,
Yeah.
that was a brilliant stroke.
Well, we really wanted to make sure to serve the constituents, and
Yeah.
it's a wonderful thing when they come in, and some things they're not sure what level of government,
Yeah.
or it might be a little bit of each side, so we're able to support them in the best way that we can, and it also helps, keep a little bit of savings so that we can, with such a large riding, have my staff able to travel a little bit more to meet with constituents. And we also have an office open up in Powell River, and in the fall we're going to be doing some looking to see if there's any other ways that we can make sure that we have, staff out in the riding doing the work that they need to do.
Yeah, good for you. How much have you spoken in Parliament?
Well, I've done several speeches and I've asked several questions during question period. So, it's a great opportunity to get up and speak about the stories and the realities that we're facing here in North Island Powell River. It's been great, actually, because I've been able to bring up, people's personal stories and share some of that information in the context of federal issues that we're facing. And it's always great when people are, happy to see their names and to have that information in the House.
Were you nervous?
Of course. I mean, when you first walk into Parliament for the first time and you find your seat with your name on it, it's a pretty incredible feeling to think about the honor and how much you've been bestowed with the trust of people, regardless of if they voted for you or not. You are now here to be that voice. So it definitely is, nerve-wracking. I'm certainly glad that I've had some of the experience that I've had that's helped me get up and ask the questions that I need to ask. And it's a lot of work. Like there's, days where I am in there by 7:30 and I don't leave till 10:30. So it's certainly teaching me a lot.
Yeah. Your seat is at the back in the corner?
I'm in the corner, not quite in the corner. I'm a little bit over from the corner, but yeah.
Yeah, and you're near Elizabeth May, you said.
Yeah, she sits behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that about as far from the speaker as you can get?
Not quite. There's one row over that's a little bit further. Good news is they have wonderful microphones, and when you speak in the House, you're definitely heard.
Yeah. Now, the NDP caucus is 33 or 35?
It's 44.
44. And that's way less than they were expecting. And we know the federal NDP had a convention recently in Edmonton where there was a big debate about the LEAP manifesto, and there's a story in the Mirror, April 20th. We need to come together as a party and move forward, MP Blaney reflects. For the people watching, tell us, what do you think of how the federal NDP is doing and where it could and should go?
Well, I think that it was an amazing thing to go to convention. It was dynamic. There was a lot of people. We had well over 1,800 people participate and get there. The energy was high. People were having very strong and powerful debates. And I really believe in the grassroots nature of our party. I think it's important that, our policy is decided by people who come and voice their differing opinions. And there was some extremely heated debate, respectful debate, but it was a wonderful thing to see. So I feel like there's some really strong energy, and I'm really proud of the people who stood up and how respectful they were in those discussions.
Yeah. How do you feel about the leader, Tom Mulcair, staying on as interim for 2 years? I mean, I can understand 6 months or something, but before you answer too, there's other exigencies like the BC election coming up in May 2017. So like if you had the federal NDP had a leadership in, say, April 2017, that's inconvenient. So I can understand, but how do you feel about the timing and such?
Well, first of all, there was a vote about a leadership review. And so that wasn't voting Tom out, that was saying we need to do a leadership review.
Yes.
Our policy says within 1 year you will do that. Immediately after the information was out, people stood up and said, we want to make sure that there's at least 2 years to do this work. We know it's important work, we need it to be done thoughtfully, and we don't want to do it in a reactionary way. That passed.
I think 18 months is probably what's going to work out, because it'll be fall
And we'll
2017.
see. I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to the council. The NDP
Yeah.
Federal Council will do their work. They'll do the research that they need to do. And as far as Tom goes, I deeply respect Tom. He has just been a profound mentor to me personally,
really?
and has taught me a lot. And
so?
just his actions in the House, the way that
Okay.
he carries himself, he has a lot of integrity. I appreciate that.
But did he sit down with you one-on-one kind of a thing?
Absolutely.
Oh,
He's
wonderful.
that kind of leader, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for us. I mean, at the end of the day, what I feel in my heart is I'm a member of Parliament for North Island Powell River. My job is to do what I can to be a strong voice for this riding and to listen to my constituents and do that hard work. Really just allowing us to leave Tom where he is, continue the work that we're doing, and start moving in the process and allowing the Federal Council to do their work.
Yeah.
It just makes sense. And it was a very supportive discussion. Our caucus is very strong and very supportive, and I'm really proud to work with such amazing individuals.
Yeah. The ones that made it there tend to be the best.
I don't know about that, because a lot of great people were
That's
lost
true
during
too,
this
yes.
this period of time.
Yes.
But we are a strong caucus, and we are working very hard.
Are there any people sort of maybe not stepping out, but emerging as potential leadership candidates?
Oh, I have no idea. I know
Okay.
that there's a lot of names being thrown around, but for me, I'm just focusing on the work that I need
Nathan
to
Cullen.
do. Well, you know, and there was people who ran in the last leadership election, so of course
Yeah.
those names are going to come up.
Yeah.
But nobody has come out to me. So as far as I know, everybody
Yeah.
is just doing their work.
Nikki Ashton is, I think, an interesting.
Yeah, and like I said, that nobody's come and said to me that they're running for leadership.
Yeah.
There's a lot of speculation, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So the mood of the party is, even though, you know, it was a bad loss, and I guess the money's probably tight, but the mood's still pretty
The
good?
mood is still pretty strong. We remember what our core values are, and our core values are around serving people, looking at inequality, and seeing how we can fight for the everyday person, the hardworking person, to make sure that they have an opportunity to live the life that they want to. Yeah.
Who do you hang out with?
Oh, well, you know what? There's actually not a lot of time to hang out with MPs, unfortunately,
Well, who
because
do you
you're
go to
so
lunch
busy. You know, I spend a lot of time with Tracy Ramses, who's an MP that's right next door to me, and Georgina Juliebois, who is my neighbor, who sits right next to me. And of course, we have a strong crew that were from the island, and we're definitely all there for each other and close to each other in our offices, which also helps.
I'm glad you mentioned that island thing, because you look across the map of Canada for the electoral boundary color, the different, right? Vancouver Island went NDP. What did the island NDP do differently than the rest of the country?
Well, you know, we worked hard collaboratively. I am, of course, the only one that has the island and the mainland, so I like to remind people that I'm not an island-only MP. Just don't forget. But I do serve coastal communities, and I think we worked well together. We had a team of people that helped us deal with issues that were particular to the island, and I think we all listened really hard to our constituents. And you know, I don't know exactly why things turn out the way they are all the time, but we worked hard, as did many MPs that were not successful, and we were very happy with the results.
Was there not an island campaign coordinator?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was that?
I don't even remember. I remember, I just remembered that at the end of the day, my campaign manager can answer those questions. My job was really getting out there and talking to the community, and that's where I focused.
You knocked on a lot of doors.
I knocked on a lot of doors in a lot of remote communities, and it was profoundly amazing.
Yeah. I happen to know the island campaign manager was going to be a local person from Campbell River, but she got reassigned to a particular riding.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know. There you go.
Yeah, but somebody really knew what they were doing, so that's to be good. What do you think of Justin Trudeau?
What do I think of Justin Trudeau? Well, you know, I'm on the other side of the progressive opposition. Really proud to be sitting there. I'm watching. I think there's been some commitments that were made that have not been followed through, and we're definitely asking a lot of questions about that. I'm really concerned about, you know, the so-called middle class tax break that they're giving that really benefits people very minimally who are making $45,000 or more. I think a lot of people in our riding, I know, are financially struggling, and I think that, you know, in some ways they've defined what they think the middle class is, but I can tell you that in our riding, middle class is not making $45,000 all the time. So, you know, we're watching and we're concerned about some of the things. I'm very concerned about our signing the deal with Saudi Arabia to sell some armored vehicles to them. You know, very concerned about our human rights in those countries. So there's a lot of things that I'm worried about, and we'll just keep bringing those issues up and having those discussions.
I'm not an expert in the Saudi Arabia deal, but that was a business deal that was signed before the government changed. And I think if the government did reverse that, it would have been probably a worse problem.
They actually just finalized and signed recently. So there was some opportunity to do a little bit of negotiating. And you know what? Sometimes you have to stand up on principle and do what's the right thing to do. And I'm concerned about what that means for us.
What do you know about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or do you know enough yet to know you like it or dislike it?
Well, I'm definitely very concerned about it. During the campaign, the Liberals made a promise to have a strong consultation process. I'm not seeing that happen. And it is concerning because it can impact a lot of jobs, a lot of, you know, farmers. I've had some dairy farmers come and chat with me about some concerns that they have.
Marketing boards.
Yeah, and again, it's always a concern when, you know, our job, I feel, in government would be to really make sure that we're protecting Canadian jobs as much as possible. One of the things that I've had some folks come and talk to me about is the reality that it opens the door for, you know, people that are buying a business here to bring in workers from their country and have them work instead of really keeping those jobs here in Canada. We have a lot of people here who need work. So I think my biggest concern is how are we including the workers and how are we protecting their rights in this country? One
of my big concerns about TPP is that it's going to give new powers for foreign investors to sue local governments. So like if Campbell River had a local favoritism clause, I don't know that they do, but these big foreign multinationals could come in and litigate a little community like, say, Quesnel into the ground. And, you know, like, okay, let's have a consultation and see, but I agree with you, the consultation looks very inadequate. Now, that's an example, perhaps among many, where the Justin Trudeau government came in as a progressive and breath of fresh air and hard to be worse than what was there kind of a thing, but what they're delivering, is it?
There's some concerns. I mean, we were just debating in the House Bill C-10, which is around Air Canada. And, you know, they want to remove some clauses from the agreement with Air Canada that would potentially mean that those maintenance jobs would be able to go somewhere else. So our concern was very strong. You know, we shouldn't do this. We should be keeping those jobs here in Canada.
The assisted dying law is a kind of a similar thing. You know, oh, good, they're doing something that needs to be done, but the analysis, and I think Murray Rankin in Victoria put out a statement, it doesn't go far enough, fast enough.
Well, and there's a lot of language that it was changed from the actual Supreme Court decision, and so then it comes back to those legal definitions. What does that really mean? I know that this is a big issue in our riding. I've heard, you know, from both sides, a lot of debate and concern about this issue. So it's something that people really resonate. It's a hard thing to think about, you know, doctor-assisted suicide, and when would that happen, and when would that be appropriate, and how do we do this in the best way? And how do we protect vulnerability? And I think what's really important is a lot of people have talked about palliative care. You know, if we don't have a strong palliative care process, if we don't have a strategy there, then why are we even going this next step? And, you know, I have to agree, we need a stronger palliative care strategy. We need to be protecting and taking care of people. And, you know, in the federal budget, that was one of my big concerns, is I actually, during the election, there was a lot of promises around home care. In the federal budget, there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. And so when I think about the people I represent in this riding, that came up a lot. They wanted to know that they could get the support they needed to stay at home as long as they possibly can, and that's nowhere to be seen.
One of the things about Liberals is they're great at making promises, and then the delivery, oh, not quite so fast, not quite so full. And that's the case with marijuana legalization. I think that was one of the pivotal issues in the federal campaign, where, you know, Tom was sort of saying, well, maybe a little bit, maybe in a while. And Justin Trudeau came out and said, no, we're going to legalize it. Well, he gets into power and it's, well, maybe a year from now.
Well, and the reality is, during the campaign, what we committed to was decriminalization, and then looking into legalization, because the reality is legalization takes a while. There's a lot of questions about who, what, when, how. But we also know that there are people that have criminal charges for having a small amount on their person. Like, I'm not talking about somebody who's got a large amount. That's a different thing. But, you know, really looking at those people who just have a little bit, who are now can't cross the border. They're having, you know, big issues with other opportunities for themselves. So again, it was a promise. It's, you know, it's a great promise to make, but it actually takes time. And it would be great to see some of the campaigns actually have a bit of a timeline about when that would happen, so that we can hold people to account.
Okay. I told Lucas, your constituency assistant, who's a very able and intelligent fellow, that I have no curveballs for you, but I've got my favorite question. Is there something you want to say that I haven't asked?
Well, I guess, you know, another thing that I'm really proud of is we did several disability tax credit workshops, had a great turnout in the North Island, in Campbell River, Comox, and in Powell River, of people really needing some of that support. It was great to be able to educate, share, and identify where the barriers were. In May, we're going to be having some more roundtables just in the North Island at this point because of time, around seniors issues, because as we've moved along, that's the biggest issue. We'll see some more of that in the fall. And I'm working really hard as an associate member on the Committee for National Defense. And so really proud of the work that we're doing there.
We got military in this riding.
We absolutely do. And I think that it's really important that as a person who represents that particular group, I need to learn more and participate. So it's been really great to work with Randall Garrison on this particular file.
He's a isn't he?
He is, and he's our committee member, the official committee member. So I've really appreciated that opportunity, and also hoping that in July, because of a time constraint, that we're able to do some roundtables around the military. Then the Minister of National Defense is hosting 6 across the country. MPs are welcome to do it if they can within their ridings. July is the only time that we can do it, because it has to be in by the end of July. So we're looking into that, and hopefully we can make that a reality as well.
Now, you're the critic for multiculturalism. That doesn't include First Nations, though.
It could to some degree, but there are, you know, there's a critic for Indigenous Affairs,
So did you get the multiculturalism thing because of your background in the Immigrant Welcome Society?
Yeah, absolutely. I work really closely with Jenny Kwan, who is our critic on immigration around some of these key issues.
How long were you at the Immigration Center here?
Immigrant Welcome Center, I was there for over 8 years.
Wow. Wow. And that's longer than you were a party member.
Yes, it was.
How do you feel about sort of suddenly being a partisan?
Well, I don't know if it's suddenly. I definitely know that, you know, when I was a little girl, I used to put up signs with my dad. And they were always NDP. So to me, it's just a great honor to do this work. At the end of the day, I feel satisfied knowing that I get to serve the people of my riding. And your deputy critic for infrastructure, that's a big... It's a huge file, infrastructure and communities,
Now, the most recent news is that the federal Liberals are going to try and expand and hasten it, is that correct?
Well, you know, they presented a budget, and the $10 billion they were promising for infrastructure is now down to just over $6 billion. So we're waiting and seeing. One of the reasons that I was really interested and pursued this particular file was small communities often get forgotten, in my opinion. And so I thought, you know, I really think it's important that we make sure to push really hard. For example, in infrastructure spending, you know, 50% was cut from their promises around transit. And I know that transit's a big issue, especially in smaller communities. And I want to make sure that some of that funding comes here.
Highway of Tears, for example. You know, another one that gets me is small communities dependent on diesel. You know, like Hartley Bay. There was a column or story in the Times Colonist recently. But like Attawapiskat and so many other of these northern remote communities. So we got to get clean energy to them. That's
Well,
infrastructure.
and that's infrastructure, and that is part of the infrastructure. That, of course, was cut as well. And what we're waiting for now is how is that going to actually be implemented, and what's their processes going to be for making that a reality.
Yeah, right. Well, I could fill the remaining time just by, we could talk about First Nations at length, but any parting thought before we go?
Any parting thought? That's a very good question. Just that, I'm really happy and proud to be doing this work.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very happy to be home for the summer and able to travel around the riding a little bit more, just going to community events. So I hope people will look for me there. I'm really looking forward to continuing the conversation. I've been absolutely thrilled by as many people who have been engaged as have been. I've met with a lot of people, a lot of leaders across the riding, and it's great to build that partnership.
Your open house was really nice too.
Well, thank you. We were surprised. We had well over 100 people attend, close to 200, and it was fantastic. It was great to have that kind of 3-hour timeline so people could pop by, but it was fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you very much for doing Talk About.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, you're welcome. We'll do it again in the spring, or maybe in the fall. Okay, there's Talk About, guest Rachel Blaney. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Shaw. And thank you, Brian Shaw, no relation, for sponsoring Talk About here on Shaw TV. If you'd like to watch it again, Shaw TV North Island has a YouTube channel. Google that and you'll find this show.